This is the City of Inver Grove Heights Engineering Office presentation. I'm Jake Moser, a staff civil engineer with the city. Presentation and this live event support is provided by Luke Morin and Emma Pickett at Kimley Horn and Associates. They're also providing project design and engineering services for this project. This is part of the 2021 Pavement Management Program, City Project number 2020-09D, Delaney Circle and Delaney Court improvements. And this is a open house, virtual open house presentation. We'd love to be doing it in person at City Hall, which is how we've done it in years past. But obviously due to the COVID situation, we got to keep everyone safe. So we're doing our best to adapt, and this is kind of our first go at a virtual open house event. So bear with us, please, but thank you for joining and thank you for your interest in this project. This is the project area map. The red lines show Delaney Circle and Delaney Court are the streets proposed to be improved with the project. All the blue properties are the 36 single-family lots that are in the project area. The total length of street being proposed for improvement here is just over 1 mile. It's about 5,500 feet. A little project history is this project was initiated from a neighborhood petition that was dated and received by council in June. There was 29 single-family property owners who signed the petition, so very strong support for a street improvement project. Council had ordered the feasibility study, which is the first step, in September of 2020. And the neighborhood and street was originally built in 1978. Some past street maintenance included seal coats in 1988, 1993, and 2000. And there's been miscellaneous patching and maintenance by city maintenance staff since then. The existing conditions are a rural section road with no curb and gutter. There is a good defined ditch section in the majority of the project area. There's a variable existing pavement width between 22 and 24 feet with variable eroded gravel shoulder. The drainage is provided by the ditches and roadway and driveway cross culverts. There are no existing city utilities. All the properties are on private wells and septic systems. This project did have a geotechnical investigation with reconstruction recommendations provided from a geotechnical investigation completed by Element Materials Technology in 2019. They did soil borings and pavement cores on Delaney Circle and Delaney Court, summarized in this table. Generally, what they found is Delaney Circle has 2.5 to 3 inches of asphalt pavement surface with 7 to 12 inches of existing aggregate base. That's built on top of sand and silty sand subgrade. Delaney Court had a little bit thicker pavement section at 5 inches and 7 to 8 inches of aggregate base. The geotechnical engineer did note that that was a poorer quality aggregate base. But again, subgrade soils are good with sand and silty sand. So the recommended reconstruction approaches for Delaney Circle is a full depth pavement reclamation, which was what the neighborhood petition had requested specifically. That involves using a reclaim machine, which grinds the existing pavement surface in with the aggregate base, mixes it to uniform material consistency. That gets reshaped and regraded, and then the new pavement is paved on top of that. Delaney Court, due to the poorer quality base, had a geotechnical recommendation for full pavement and base replacement. These improvements are considered a partial reconstruction. I'll touch back on that a little bit more. That factors into assessments. But that basically means it's pavement and aggregate base are the only street disturbances proposed with no subgrade improvements. That sand and silty sand is a good quality material to build the road on again. There may be some softer spots we encounter during construction. This last bullet notes subgrade repairs identified during construction. If we encounter softer or wet subgrade spots, those might get excavated and replaced with sand, but that would be on a relatively small area. So those disturbances are going to be kept to a minimum as much as possible. The preliminary proposed street improvements is going to be trying to keep things very similar to the existing street as far as width and shape. It'd be a 12-foot, two 12-foot lanes for a 24-foot pavement mat with 2-foot gravel shoulders. As I mentioned, the full depth reclamation, or FDR, involves reclaiming the pavement surface in with the gravel base and paving new pavement on top of that. The new street would be new bituminous pavement on reclaimed or new aggregate base with new shouldering. And we're going to try to minimize disturbances to the ditch and boulevard as much as possible. We know residents are looking for just a new clean street. They don't want, we're not going to put in curb or gutter or anything like that. As part of the full depth reclamation, that would, since we're going to keep the existing material there and pave on top of it, it would involve raising the street profile a little bit. And that would require replacing some driveway aprons. That would generally be the first 5 to 10 feet as needed to tie into the new road profile. There are no city utilities proposed with this project. We've heard from several residents, and we are not proposing sewer or water. Everyone will stay on their private wells and septic systems. So we're still in the feasibility report preparation phase. We did receive quite a few questionnaires from residents. If you still have yours, it's not too late. Feel free to send it in, send it back to Luke. But we did get great response. I think we had 17 households provide responses to those questionnaires. Some of the issues that were noted on the questionnaires include some localized ponding in the ditches and along the roadway, edge of the roadway, where maybe the shoulder settled out or it's just deteriorated, and it's, potholes are causing some localized small ponding. A few residents have noted some miscellaneous drainage issues or erosion issues, and those are going to be reviewed in the feasibility report in the stormwater analysis. I know we had a couple questionnaires. Residents had responded requesting for review of turning radiuses at the intersections to make, for longer vehicles or potentially people with trailers, so don't have to drive over lawns, pulling a trailer. And some people noted some culvert flow issues. The feasibility report will include some stormwater analysis that involves reviewing regional and local stormwater conveyance through the ditches, generally along the road and some areas in the rear yards. We are not proposing any stormwater ponds or basins with this project. The ravine and ditch erosion issues will be reviewed in the feasibility report, and we'll ask City Council to determine if any potential improvements would be included with this project, but that we're still reviewing those with this feasibility report, and Council will make any final decisions on that. And we're reviewing driveway and roadway culverts, and generally they would be cleaned or replaced based on condition review. So if they're rusted out and deteriorated, they might require a new culvert. And if it's just filled up with sediment or debris, they would just potentially be cleaned with this project. And again, the final improvements will be identified following the completion of the stormwater analysis. We're still in the feasibility report, very preliminary project review phase at the moment. So the good stuff now, the preliminary project costs, funding, and city assessment policy. The preliminary estimated costs for the roadway improvements is $771,000. Stormwater improvements, which is generally just currently budgeted for culverts and some ditch work, is at $59,000 for a total preliminary estimated project cost of $830,000. And the funding would be through a combination of the city pavement management PMP fund and special assessments. The city assessment policy for a neighborhood of single-family lots is that all single-family lots will pay the same assessment amount. So corner lots don't pay double, or generally, as long as in a neighborhood like this, the lots are considered similar enough property types that we believe the fairest way is to have every home in the neighborhood pay the same assessment amount. And based on the project reconstruction approach as a partial reconstruction, the city assessment policy is to assess 55% of the street and stormwater project costs to benefiting property owners. So based on 55% of the preliminary project cost being divided amongst the 36 single-family properties in the project area, that per policy assessment amount comes out to $12,676.74. The city will generally always hire an independent appraiser to provide a special benefit cap amount. And in this case, based on that independent appraiser report, the maximum benefit that the properties could receive from this project is $9,600. So the assessment amount is based on the lower of the cap and the policy amount. And in this case, that would be the capped amount of $9,600. So the special benefit assessment terms, there would be an option to pay the full assessment to the city within 30 days of when that assessment would be levied. That would be in the future, in the spring. I'll touch on schedule later. But there's certainly an option of the payment plan, which would be set, a term and interest rate would be set by city council. And the interest rate is dependent on the current interest rate that the city can get, and staff would generally recommend for this type of project a 10-year term. So if you chose to let that assessment be levied to the county, it would get put on a 10-year, or 10-year would be recommended, but it'd be put on a payment plan that would just be incorporated in with your biannual county tax statement. The project schedule is tonight we're having the virtual feasibility report open house, and we're looking to get some comments and questions from residents and get resident input, and we'll include that in our feasibility report as we're preparing it. And we're scheduled to complete that feasibility report in December and bring it to council for approval on December 14th. We'd also ask that council would call for the improvement hearing and set the date for the improvement hearing. In early January, we'd have another open house event like this, where we'd have more project information to present, and have another opportunity to answer questions, or for residents to ask questions and have them answered by staff before the improvement hearing. On January 11th, we'd be going back to council for the improvement hearing, where we'd present the recommended project and ask that council order plans and specifications. We'll be doing final design during January and February, and on March 8th, bring plans back to council requesting approval for plans and specifications and authorization for bidding. We'd be letting bids during March and scheduling the bid opening for late March or likely to be early April of 2021. Following receiving the bids, we would have another informational meeting. That'd be the assessment hearing informational meeting to be scheduled in April of 2021. At that point, we'd have bids in hand from the contractor, and we'd have the proposed final assessments that would, in that case, be based on contractor costs. So at that point, we'd have a much tighter project cost, and with the proposed assessments would be based on that. And then we'd be scheduling that assessment hearing tentatively for May 10th of 2021. And at that meeting, we'd also be asking that council hold that assessment hearing. And that's a public hearing where residents are certainly welcome to attend and encouraged, and ask that council award the project. And then we'd tentatively be beginning construction in June of 2021. Oops. I'm sorry, I'll get that last slide here. So I'll leave this slide up with the instructions for asking questions. I'm going to ask that Luke with Kimley Horn can help summarize the questions that residents have been asking.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Like Jake said, my name is Luke Morin with Kimley Horn Associates. We are the consulting firm that's partnering with the city to do the engineering of the improvements that Jake just ran through in the presentation. So I'd encourage people, certainly, I see there's one question, which we can address that one here, but if folks have questions, or not just questions, but even just comments on things that they want left, both just for the record, as the information that you guys do share in this meeting will also be included in the feasibility report that then goes to council. So that's another way to, if you have something that you'd like council ultimately to see, certainly submit those questions or whatever comments you have. So the first question that came through, someone asked, why was Delaney Court resurfaced a couple years ago to be torn up now? So, you know, specifically the scope of what that resurfacing was, I'm not sure, but a few years ago, this project would not have been programmed through the city CIP. And maybe Jake can cover this a little better than I can, but a portion of the city CIP, and the reason that this project is being initiated right now is the city is receiving petitions from neighborhoods to initiate these projects and investigate a street improvement project. So a few years ago, when that would have been resurfaced, this project wasn't planned, and the city did not know the neighborhood was going to submit a petition for an improvement. And I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Jake.
I guess I'll add. I was not aware that it was resurfaced. The city has in the past sometimes done a broad area patching where they do a very thin layer of new asphalt pavement. And we will need to look further into that. If that did receive a broad area patch, that's something that may affect the Delaney Court design.
All right. So we'll take a look at that, as Jake said, and at the next open house, we will make a note to follow up on that specifically, just to close the loop on folks, if there's anything that's going to change related to Delaney Court. Next question that got submitted: what is the typical project length for something of this scope? I would say there isn't a typical project length. Generally, the city, as they either receive petitions or plans street improvement projects, they are doing them in, or they're not doing more than what's reasonable to construct in one construction season over one summer. But I mean, generally, I would say it's atypical to have something more, or a few miles would be as long as these projects would typically get, but I wouldn't say there's necessarily anything that's typical for the length. It's just kind of what the streets are through the neighborhood.
I'll add just a little bit. In recent years, the city has generally been trying to do improvement projects on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, because we do assess that allows the project funding to be, specific to a neighborhood. But so we've done, I know we've had projects on Atwater Path and upper 55th Street and 55th Street Court. I believe those were shorter length, although those were urban street sections with curb and gutter. In this case, having a 1 mile section of road, that should provide a pretty reasonably good economy of scale for this, to get good bid prices for construction of this project.
Okay. Next question was in relation to, I have rain gardens in the ditch along the road. Do you anticipate much disturbance to landscaping? So generally, the disturbance adjacent to the roadway pavement today, we are not anticipating a lot of disturbance outside of that. There's likely to be some touch-up grading on the slopes directly off the roadway on both sides, just as we install new pavement, but there's certainly no plans to do anything as far as reestablishing the entire ditch. One thing that will likely get discussed a little more at the next open house, if there are things like irrigation, the question referenced landscaping, so we'll have to see what's meant by that. But if there are private obstructions in the right-of-way that do conflict with construction, we will be asking residents to move those ahead of construction. But specific to the question, we don't anticipate a lot of disturbance from the slope off the roadway outside of that area. Next question: there are some flooding issues during heavy rain and snow melt at the bottom of Delaney Court. Were they considered in the plan? I think I recall the questionnaire that there was a map that kind of drew this out and referenced it. So we are taking a look at that with the stormwater analysis that Jake went through. And I don't have a specific answer to at this time whether or not there's something there that the city feels is necessary, but we will have an update on that at the next open house when that analysis is included with the feasibility report and we know the scale of the stormwater improvements that are going to be proposed for the project.
Yeah, and we're still, we just got the topographic survey and culvert inventory for this, so we're still in the process of reviewing this information. But if that was something that is being caused by an undersized culvert or a clogged culvert, that's likely to be something that would be included. But again, it's at the feasibility report stage that we're at. We are including all of these comments and information and reviewing it, and we'll be presenting that in the feasibility report. But there is no plan set on paper or in stone at this point. So it's certainly something we'll be looking at.
All right, next question, can pavement approaching mailboxes be extended to keep wheels on pavement to prevent holes and ponding that exists at every mailbox now? So I know the city does have a standard plate for rural mailbox installation that does, I believe, and Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that does widen out the pavement at the mailbox. But we can confirm that. But that's what I believe the city standard is for rural section roadways, which in this case we would be implementing that standard plate with the project. Next question, what will access to our homes be like during construction? So like any street reconstruction project that the city does, it's typical to require the contractor to maintain access to your driveway and subsequently your home at all times. There's likely to be short periods of time where work is happening directly in front of your home, where there'll be a minor disturbance to your access. But that question specifically, we'll address that more in the spring after the project's bid, and we have a better understanding of what the contractor's plan is. And at that time, we'll be able to run through more of what the expectations will be like during construction. But as a general statement, you will have access to your house during the project and your driveway.
And this, and I see one other question that'll come up that's kind of related to this, but you could expect that there will be periods of time where there's not going to be pavement after we do the reclaim. It might be a week or two where the road is just left as a gravel or the reclaimed material surface, but it will be graded and shaped that you can still drive on it, certainly. But as as the contractor is staging, doing the reclaim and the grading, and then the paving, ultimately that process could take several weeks or over a month potentially between the time when they first reclaim and get final wear course pavement down. But they will be required to keep that accessible, and it should be you'll still have access, and so hopefully that helped.
All right, next question. I assume that this will greatly reduce the pothole problem. If that turns out to not be the case, would the residents be refunded a part of their assessment? So, the street improvements, we've done a geotechnical investigation. We'll make an engineering recommendation. The city, we would not expect there to be a pothole problem after the project. I guess this is a question I've never gotten, but no, there would not be a refund on your assessment. But from an engineering standpoint, we're taking the steps to make sure that the recommended improvements and the pavement section that we're building is being put there to last, so you guys don't have the issue of potholes on the roads, because the city doesn't, in the same sense, doesn't want to be back here to address potholes or another project anytime soon. Does construction last 2 weeks or 2 months? So this project, we haven't gotten into the project schedule as far as what we would think for construction. I would not anticipate this project to be the kind of maybe some of the projects you've seen in the city where they go from the April timeframe all the way to October, just because of the scope of the improvements that we have. But I would expect it to be a couple months, certainly. And the amount of disturbance during that time period is going to vary based on what the contractor's doing, whether it's driveways, the roadway, culverts, establishing turf, that sort of thing. Next question, any consideration for speed control measures? People speed on the street way too much. That's a common question we get from neighborhoods when we come through on these projects. So Jake, I may have you help me on this one, but I believe the kind of the standard answer is that is a police item. So as part of the project, you know, specifically, we're not implementing any sort of traffic calming kind of measures. This is a street reconstruction project that we're addressing the stormwater issues that are needed and improving the street as needed. If there are concerns related to speeding, I believe that's an item to be addressed with the city police department.
Yeah, I know that Luke's pretty much spot on with his response. We would likely not be proposing any calming, like no speed bumps or anything. That is something that could be requested of council or to review, do a speed study, but that would generally not be included with this project. But we can include that comment in the feasibility report.
All right, next question, how long should the new road last? So the standard design for the streets is a 20-year pavement design. So, I mean, that would be, in this instance, what we would be expecting from the design of the road. The city now, as a part of their pavement management program that got implemented I don't know what year that was, Jake, you might have to help me on that, but the city is now, when they go through and doing these projects, there will be ongoing maintenance to the new road, which will include crack seals, seal coats, and potentially things like mill and overlays in the future, that the city will look to extend the life of the large investment that they're going to be making here to build this project correctly this time around. And
yep. I know the city's had a pavement management program, I believe, since the 90s, which has involved generally the seal coat, the crack seal and seal coat maintenance, which would certainly be with the, you know, as you noticed earlier in the presentation, we haven't done seal coats in 20 years now, but we definitely do crack seal and seal coats on the newer streets. That is preventative maintenance that benefits the road. Done early. I believe we'll do a crack seal within the first 2 years and a seal coat the following year, and then I think the program is for about every 5 years for a new for another crack seal or seal coat. It's either 3 or 5 years. I'm sorry, but and those crack seal and seal coat maintenance projects are included in the pavement management, completely funded by the pavement management fund, so there's no assessments associated with that.
Jake and Luke, this is Steve Dodge. May I just chime in for one comment? And it relates to a few of the questions we've had about you know, pavement cycle and lifespan. And I want to remind everyone that for Delaney Circle, what's being proposed is to do a reclamation of the pavement into the existing gravel section. We may amend that in order to meet certain classification of gravel. But what's going to happen then is most of the gravel and pavement section that we're grinding up together would be homogeneous and mixed in place. And then we would add 4 inches of pavement above that. What you have out there right now is 2.5 to 3 inches of pavement. And the reason for the 4 inches of pavement is so that we can come back and do a mill and overlay and do some of the pavement management strategies that Jake is talking about. So we expect the life of the road to be longer than the pavement that you've had to date. not only due to newer technologies in pavement, but the thicker pavement section that's going in, and also the beefier gravel section that will be left in place when the project is done. So I just wanted to point those out while we're talking about, and that kind of answers a question coming up of whether we're doing 2 lifts or 1 lift, because we're proposing 4 inches of pavement to go in. It would be done in 2 lifts, 2 2-inch lifts.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, and and I guess this is jumping ahead to a question that came in somewhat recently. That was a comment about the best practices call for seal coating and chip seal more than 3 times in 43 years. Will this new road be properly maintained? That's kind of what we've been talking through. The city has this pavement management program now on their streets where they have scheduled improvements for chip seals and seal coats on a rated schedule based on when the street was improved, so that like the comment noted, we can meet those best practices and extend the life of the newly constructed pavement as long as we can. So yes, there's a plan to maintain Delaney Court and Delaney Circle following the street project. All right, another question, will the elevation of my driveway change? In some ways that's to be determined. One thing that, as Jake was talking through and explaining the pavement reclamation process, which includes grinding up that existing pavement on the streets. So as that pavement is ground up with the gravel base beneath to create new material for the roadway to sit on, that will, depending on how we look at the crowns, which is your slope of your roadway from the center, depending on as we get into design and take a look at that, there is a chance that the roadway will be raised a couple inches. In the event that happens, we would be reconstructing driveways and tying those in. But being the change in elevation is only potentially expected to be a few inches, the elevation or grade changes on driveways would be very minor. Next question, so there is no warranty for the work. That would not be accepted for any other service provider. So I'm not sure what the sort or what I guess triggered this question to come in, but the city does include a 2-year warranty requirement as a part of their projects. So certainly after the work is constructed by the contractor, there is a period of time where it will continue to be reviewed, and if issues that are warranting addressing due to errors on the contractor's end or material issue that came up that can't be accepted as a part of the contract the city will have with the contractor, they will be required to address that under that warranty. And
I suspect this may have come from the pothole question from before, who had asked about being refunded on assessments. And yeah, so as Luke said, we do have a 2-year warranty bond with the contractor after the work's performed, and the road will be inspected following construction and during those 2 years. And if there was generally, I mean, if there was major material issues or construction quality issues, we'd expect to start seeing signs of that potentially within that first 2 years. So if we start seeing major cracking or soft spots settlement in the road, that would lead to future potholes, popping up a lot quicker, we would have those issues corrected under that warranty period. So hopefully that provides a little clarity.
All right, there was a question, 2 lifts or 1 lift. That question Steve kind of answered when he chimed in, but that's a question in reference to how many lifts of asphalt pavement are going to be placed. Like Steve had mentioned previously, we are proposing 4 inches of pavement, which will be placed in 2 separate lifts, which will aid in us making sure we get good density on the pavement. So the road does last as long as we would expect it to. Next question, during this new pavement process, is there an option to contract with a construction company hired to redo a driveway? So there's probably a couple items here to note. The city does have a driveway restoration program that I guess I'll punt to Jake to see if he wants to run through that now or if we want to hold off on that till the next open house.
Well, I think I can provide an answer for now, and that is, yeah, as Luke mentioned, there's a driveway restoration program that the city offers, and we'll discuss that more at the improvement hearing because, as Luke said, there's a good chance that because we're doing the full depth reclamation and paving on top of existing material, that currently we are planning for, there will be quite a few driveways where that 5 to 10 feet will need to be, the driveways will need to be, that 5 to 10 feet of the driveways will need to be replaced. But we'll be reviewing that as we're getting into design here. And if there is enough driveway impacts, we would likely pursue or offer the driveway replacement program, which is an opportunity for homeowners who are interested in replacing their entire driveway. They could get a credit applied to their assessment, and that credit amount is based on the average of the driveway costs averaged over all the lots. So, some people there might be a need for 10 foot of driveway apron replacement. Some people might only have a need for 5 feet, but regardless, those costs would be averaged. So that credit would be calculated based on the average driveway apron cost for each lot. And then, so residents who would be interested in replacing their whole driveway could enter an agreement with the city that says, I will not, I agree to not have my driveway apron replaced with this project, and I'll take the credit to my assessment, but you are responsible then to hire a contractor separately from the project. So you could certainly approach the contractor who's working on this project, but that driveway contract would be separate from this project. So if that makes sense, because you'd also have the option to hire your own separate contractor who offered you a better quote for a driveway. So again, we'll touch on that, provide a little more clarity on confirming that we'd be proposing the driveway program with this project, as long as it makes sense, but hopefully that provided a little better answer.
Yeah, and I guess to address the question directly, yes, there is an option to contact the contractor who is actually constructing the roadway improvements to redo your driveway, but ultimately that is a conversation between you and the contractor. And we have seen both contractors be willing to do private driveway work and other contractors not. So there's certainly the city has no say in whether or not the contractor will be willing to do that work for you. All right, next question. Turning radii are too narrow. Any way of making them a wider sweep? Delaney Court subsurface was not corrected during overlay and needs to be repaved like the rest of Delaney Circle. So the turning radii specifically, we'll take a look at what those look like versus what the city standard for rural section neighborhoods is, but we likely will also evaluate potentially a ribbon curb on the turning radii. I know sometimes that can help avoiding vehicle tracking as you turn or as you make turns at intersection. That provides an additional width of pavement to protect the turf and the edge of the pavement so that doesn't erode away. But certainly we are taking a look at that. We noted that question when that came in on the questionnaire, and we will be addressing those turning radii with the project. The other question, or the other piece of that question, So the Delaney Court subsurface was not corrected during overlay and needs to be repaved like the rest of Delaney Circle. So I guess with the improvements that we're proposing currently on Delaney Court, which is to replace the pavement and the base, we should correct any issues related to the base on Delaney, if I'm understanding what that question is asking.
Yeah, I'd like to make a little comment here too, Luke. I think what we are learning here, that it sounds like there was a somewhat recent, what the city refers to as broad area patching on Delaney Court. And I know when I drove it in the last couple weeks, Delaney Court, the pavement is still in pretty rough shape. But that would also make sense why the pavement's a little thicker there. The city's broad area patching program has not been documented real thoroughly in the last few years, or it's been done. It's been done, I think, over the last decade or more even. But yeah, so that would be, this project is planning to replace or use the full depth reclamation on all of Delaney Court as well. So hopefully that answers the second part of that question there.
Jake, may I pipe in just for a second?
Sure.
Yeah, and typically on most of these projects, when we do these full depth reclamations, or like Delaney Court, which is a partial reconstruction, we will always do a subgrade roll test and verification before we fix up the gravel and pave. So if we do our roll test and we find out that below the gravel we find any soft spots that don't meet specifications, we usually have it in our plan set and in our bids to work with the contractor to do some subgrade correction. So if there are areas that you know as a resident that you think there may be some spotty bad soils, that's always good to know. And we will normally incorporate some type of that type of operation within our bids so that can be done with the project.
Hey, Luke, I want to jump back in. I noticed, I think we skipped one question I'd like to comment on. It was before the turn radius and overlay or reclaim question on Delaney Circle, but a comment was made that best practices call for seal coating and chip sealing more than 3 times in 43 years. And will this new road be properly maintained? So yeah, that is a very valid comment. And as I mentioned, I think earlier in the presentation, after the initial 22 years of the road, that it had about 3 seal coats during that period. After that point, the road was considered too far in disrepair for a seal coat to be effective. But certainly, with this, after this new road improvement, that the maintenance, the seal coat and crack seal maintenance would be performed regularly. And the way the city pavement management schedule is set up is that this road would be receiving crack seal and seal coat maintenance for the first 15 years or so of its lifespan, and kind of tends to depend on how quickly it may be deteriorating. But we'd expect this improvement to last, at least 20, 25 years, hopefully. At that point, so we'd be doing crack seal and seal coat for the first 15 years of that. After that point, those preventative maintenance methods are not as effective. The pavement's kind of dried out and there's too many cracks to chase with crack seal. So at that point, it would be scheduled for a mill and overlay following that period. And then, so that would be another improvement 20 years out or more. that it would get a mill and overlay, and after that, again, it would be getting crack seal and seal coat maintenance, and that cycle would continue until 50 years or so when it may need a new project similar to this reconstruction project. So hopefully that answered that question a little bit better. I'll let Luke re-lead the questions now.
Yep, so we got a few more questions left, so certainly keep submitting them if people have other things they want to ask tonight. But I'll go ahead into the next question, and it looks like I think 2 of them are related. So in the event the roadway should fail, as in the washerboard effect experienced in the past near the Holiday Station by Concord and Highway 52, would the city repair that? And I think there was a follow-up question that said, would the city repair that without new assessments? So specifically, I'm not familiar with the issue that's happened at Concord 52, but in the event of damage to the roadway or things occurring there from large and significant storm events, I mean, the city will maintain the streets and would address repairs as needed. And that would be part of regular maintenance of the streets and would not be a specific, it wouldn't be another project that's assessing the property owners. Correct, Jake?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Concord and 52. I don't know where the washboard is, if it's on Concord, but I do know, like on Cahill Avenue, on Cahill and 80th Street, there's a pretty significant washboard effect on Cahill right now. Granted, that road is getting pretty old, but often you tend to see that washboard effect at intersection approaches, so where they're getting heavier traffic too. So we wouldn't necessarily anticipate that here, but regardless, if there was a local area of pavement distress like that, like a washboard effect at an intersection approach, the city would generally repair that, just with maintenance, where they'd maybe do a spot mill and repave in that area, and that type of maintenance or repair would not be assessed.
And the last question I believe we have not answered, will the replaced section of driveway be replaced with like material? So yes, if you have a bituminous or asphalt driveway, you will get asphalt back. If you have a concrete driveway, the impacted area would be replaced with concrete. And then I know there are also a couple gravel driveways through the neighborhood. So if there's any work needed on those, the city will replace those with gravel. So I think we got all the questions. I guess it certainly, if folks have anything else, continue to submit it. We'll hang around here for a little bit. I see there's still 10 attendees into the meeting, so I guess maybe to track back, there will be, like Jake said on the schedule, there is going to be another meeting like this following the feasibility report being presented to council, and that meeting will be ahead of the public hearing. So if there are questions that you think of after this meeting, you can certainly, Jake's my contact information may be on the website as well, but you can certainly reach out to either of us and we can answer it, or there will be an opportunity at another meeting like this to ask those questions. So if you think of something after the meeting, we can either answer it now with phone call or email, or we can address it at the next open house meeting.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you everyone for attending tonight. I think we had a pretty good turnout here and had some great questions. Flagged a few things that we need to certainly look into further as we're preparing the feasibility report and looking ahead into design. And just a further comment on Luke's point that we will have another informational open house prior to the public hearing for the ordering the improvement, where we'll have more solid information on what the proposed design is, we'd have a lot better idea about culvert and driveway impacts at that point. And again, feel free to reach out to me or Luke at any time. I know the Delaney webpage just has my contact information, but feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call at any time with questions or just a comment. We're happy to do our best to answer those questions, and certainly looking for any other comments that residents have. You know the neighborhood better than we do. Certainly, we do our best to be do our research and be up to, know what we're looking for in the neighborhood. But residents who live there certainly have a lot of valuable information, and your comments are very appreciated as we're looking at this going into design. So my email is jmoser@igh.gov. And I believe my office number is listed on the website as well. We are currently working remotely, so it'll go to voicemail. Please leave me a voicemail and your number, and I'll call you back on my cell phone. Usually within 24 hours, if not sooner. I'll try to be as responsive as possible. But yeah, your questions or comments are always welcome, and thank you for coming tonight.